I sat down on the white-painted wooden chair, facing my parents and my two younger brothers in the familiar kitchen I once considered home. The aroma of pot roast and garlic bread filled the air, evoking memories of family dinners from my childhood. But tonight, something felt different. Nathan and Lucas, my twin brothers, leaned back in their chairs, their expressions triumphant. My parents, David and Margaret, exchanged a quick glance before my mother spoke, her voice carefully composed. "We want to talk to you about an important decision." I set my fork down, feeling the tension rise within me. "We've finalized our will," my father continued, his tone steady but lacking its usual warmth, "and we want you to hear it from us now, so there's no confusion later." Nathan leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, a smug smirk forming on his lips. "To put it simply, everything goes to us." I froze. "What?" Lucas repeated it, his tone light, as if delivering an unimportant announcement. "Mom and Dad are leaving this house, the beach condo, and all their assets to us. You get nothing." The room suddenly fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic from the quiet suburban street outside. I turned to my mother, hoping she would deny what I had just heard. But she only gave a small, firm nod. "We think this is for the best," she said, clutching the napkin in her lap. "You have a stable career, a solid income, but Nathan and Lucas are still finding their way. They need more support." I turned to my father, waiting for an explanation, some sign of hesitation, but he simply stared down at his glass of water, avoiding my gaze. Pain surged through my chest, mixed with rising anger. I had done everything for them. For over a decade, I had paid a large portion of their mortgage, covered countless medical bills, and even helped Nathan and Lucas multiple times when they couldn't handle their own finances. And now, this was how they repaid me? "So after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything?" My voice wavered despite my efforts to keep it steady, but I couldn't hide the deep hurt behind my words. My mother sighed, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Evelyn, you always make everything about money." I clenched my hands under the table, the sharp sting of betrayal piercing through me. "It's not about money," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's about fairness, about how I've always been there whenever you needed me, but now, just because I'm independent, because I don't rely on you, I have no value to this family?" Nathan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "You're being dramatic. No one forced you to help. You just liked playing the martyr." Lucas chuckled too, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us?" His words hit me like a slap across the face. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to correct him, to reprimand him for his cruelty. But nothing. They stayed silent. And in that silence, I understood everything. I swallowed hard, the pain swelling in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself. "All right," I said, my voice even. "If that's your decision, then I have one of my own." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what's that?" I pushed my chair back and stood up, my heart pounding. "From now on, don't expect anything from me." I turned away from the dinner table, leaving behind their stunned expressions. The scent of pot roast and garlic bread, once comforting, now felt empty and meaningless. As I walked out the door, no one stopped me. No one called my name. No hesitation. And I knew, in that moment, everything had changed. I stepped out of the house I had grown up in, but this time there was no sense of familiarity, no lingering attachment. The warmth of family dinners and childhood security had long faded. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that couldn't be undone. The night air was crisp, but I felt a burning heat rise to my temples. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio like I usually did. I needed the silence to process everything. Why was I even surprised? Hadn't I always known that, in their eyes, I was nothing more than their financial safety net? Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my hands trembling as I unlocked my phone. The conversation replayed in my head, every word cutting deeper. Nathan and Lucas were getting everything. And me? The one who had paid for their mistakes? Who had covered Nathan's tuition every time he switched majors? Who had sent Lucas money when he wanted a new car for his social media image? I was left with nothing. I opened my banking app. The numbers stared back at me like a brutal reminder. $1,900 every month. The amount I had been sending to my parents to cover their mortgage and expenses. Another $1,200 for Nathan and Lucas every time they called, complaining about money problems. My parents said I was successful and didn't need help. But what would happen to them without my support? Could they even keep their home? I hovered my finger over the automatic transfers section. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. For years, I had accepted this burden as my responsibility. But this was their choice. They didn't need me. They had made that clear. No one was forcing me to continue. 1 second. 2 seconds. I pressed cancel. A notification popped up. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave of emotion crashed over me. Anger, bitterness, but also something else. Relief. I set my phone down, sinking into the couch, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders that I had carried for far too long. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying the past years in my head. The vacations I had turned down to cover their mortgage, the late nights working overtime to send Nathan tuition money, the sacrifices I had made believing they mattered. But now that I needed just 1 ounce of recognition, one sign that I was appreciated, they couldn't even give me that. The next morning, my phone rang non-stop. Ma? I hesitated before answering. Evelyn, did you cancel this month's payment? Her voice was sharp with worry, but she masked it with that familiar tone of disappointment. I took a deep breath. Yes, Mom. Because I realized I don't have to do this anymore. She was silent for a moment. What do you mean? Family supports each other. You know we rely on that money for the bills. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice steady. Mom, family only matters to you when I'm paying for everything. I've helped for years, but in the end, I still don't mean anything to you. You're being selfish, Evelyn. Her voice rose. Why are you acting this way, just because of the will? Everything isn't about money. I laughed, but not out of amusement. Not about money. I was the one paying the bills for you, for this entire family. If money doesn't matter, then why don't you ask Nathan and Lucas to take care of you instead? Silence stretched on the other end of the line. I could picture my mother's face. Angry, frustrated at being confronted. I can't believe you're acting like this, she finally said. This isn't the Evelyn I raised. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight in my chest. Mom, this is me. But you never really saw me. I hung up before she could say anything else. Standing there in my apartment, emotions swirled inside me. I knew she would call again. Dad might try too. And Nathan and Lucas would definitely jump in with their mockery or accusations. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to answer. I was no longer the family's ATM. I was no longer the only one carrying the weight. I had let go, and it was the best decision I had ever made. I set my phone down on the table, feeling both weightless and heavy at the same time. Mom had said exactly what I expected, accusing me of selfishness, of betrayal, of abandoning the family. But what she didn't realize was that I had heard those words so many times that they had lost all meaning. I looked around my apartment, suddenly seeing it in a new light. It was no longer just a stopover between work and endless bank transfers to my family. It was mine. The only space where I didn't have to carry anyone else's burdens. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank statement. The list of monthly expenses stared back at me. Transfers to my parents, to Nathan, to Lucas. A constant reminder of the dependency they had placed on me. Not anymore. I canceled them one by one, each confirmation feeling like a sharp, clean cut from the past. $1,900 for the mortgage, gone. $600 for utilities, gone. I sat there, staring at the screen, which now showed no active recurring payments. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But strangely, an emptiness crept in. I had spent so much time, so much effort being the responsible daughter, the one who carried what Nathan and Lucas were never asked to. Now, without those obligations, what was I supposed to do with myself? I stood up, poured a glass of water, sipping it slowly. Outside the window, the city buzzed on, life moving forward. And yet, I felt like I had just stepped into an entirely new world, one where I could set the rules. My phone vibrated, a message from Lucas. "What the hell are you doing? Nathan just told me you cut off the money. Do you think this is funny?" I read it, but didn't reply. A few minutes later, another message popped up. From Nathan this time. "You're a traitor. Don't expect anyone in this family to see you as one of us ever again." I smirked, not because I was happy, but because I finally saw the truth. I was never truly part of this family. I was just their sponsor. I put my phone down, stepped onto the balcony. The night breeze brushed against my skin, cool and refreshing. I took a deep breath. I had done the right thing. And nothing would make me turn back now. The next morning, my phone rang non-stop. I didn't even need to check the screen to know who it was. Slowly, I picked it up. Mom's voice burst through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Evelyn, what are you thinking?" she nearly shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Why did you cancel the payments? You know we need that money to cover the bills." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I've helped enough." "Helped? You're abandoning your family. Have you even thought about how this affects us? We sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay us?" I let out a dry chuckle. "Sacrificed? Do you not see the irony in that? If I owe you for raising me, haven't I already paid you back by funding this entire family?" Mom hesitated, but then her voice turned sharper. "You've changed, Evelyn. You let money control you." "No, Mom, you let money control you," I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. "But I'm not your personal bank anymore." She exhaled loudly and hung up without another word. I stared at the screen. Then more messages flashed. "Nathan, you're ungrateful. Mom's crying because of you. Lucas, you think you're so smart? You'll regret this one day. Nathan, don't bother showing up at our parents' funeral when they're gone." I read each message, anger bubbling beneath my skin. Not one apology, not one question about why I had done it. They didn't care how they had treated me all these years. They were just mad because I had stopped funding their lives. The phone rang again. Dad this time. I let it ring. It kept ringing. I turned off the ringer, then went into my settings. Lock. Nathan. Lock. Lucas. Mom. Block. Yeah. Block. Once I was done, I set my phone down, closed my eyes, and exhaled. Silence filled my apartment, a rare and unfamiliar peace. No more ringing, no more messages filled with guilt trips, no more manipulation. I stepped onto my balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air. This peace felt foreign, but also incredibly freeing. For the first time in years, I was truly free. 3 weeks passed in silence. No more relentless calls, no more guilt-laden messages from Mom. I began to believe they had finally accepted the truth, that I was no longer their financial safety net. Then, on a Friday evening, a message appeared on my screen. "Family meeting, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late." Short, cold, no explanation. I looked at my mother's message, feeling a sinking sensation in my chest. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, smaller yet persistent, whispered that maybe this was the last chance for things to get better. Maybe, after everything that had happened, they truly wanted to have an honest conversation with me. I decided to go. As I stepped into my parents' house, the tension in the living room was suffocating. Nathan and Lucas were already seated on the couch, arms crossed, their expressions cold. My father stood near the fireplace, while my mother sat in the armchair, her eyes red and puffy as if she had been crying. Before I could speak, my mother did. "Evelyn, I don't understand you anymore." Her voice trembled. "How much further do you want to go in destroying this family?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" My father let out a heavy sigh. "You've put us in serious financial trouble. If you keep being stubborn, your mother is going to break down." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So now I'm the reason Mom is exhausted? What about all those years I carried this family financially? She seemed just fine then." Nathan scoffed, shaking his head. "You always make everything about money. Do you really think the world revolves around you?" Lucas leaned forward, arms crossed in defiance. "Come on, you have a good job, a comfortable life. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? You're just paying the price for being selfish." Their words cut deep. I had come here hoping for a genuine conversation, but all I was met with was manipulation and pressure. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "If this is why you called me here, then don't waste your time. I'm not coming back." My mother's face went blank. "What did you just say?" I stood up, taking one last look around the house. "I have done everything I could to be a part of this family. But if my worth to you is only measured by how much money I bring in, then I don't need that kind of love." No one said a word as I turned and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. I left, for good this time. 2 days later, when I returned to my apartment late at night, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My front door had been sealed shut with industrial foam, covering the doorframe and handle. I reached out and touched the hardened material, solid and cold. Someone had done this on purpose. I took a step back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was an intentional act to keep me out of my own home. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and checked the hallway security camera. I fast-forwarded through the footage from earlier that evening. And then, there it was. Lucas, wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, but his posture and stride were unmistakable. He smirked as he held the foam spray can, carefully filling every crack and crevice of my door. My hands trembled with rage. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I handed over the footage as evidence. One of them nodded as he watched the video. "Do you want to press charges?" I gripped my phone tightly, a chill running down my spine. If I let this go, it would only escalate. Lucas wasn't just angry. He was willing to cross the line to retaliate. I took a deep breath, my gaze firm. I want him held accountable. The next day, my phone rang again. I ignored it. Then Dad. Then Nathan. Finally, I picked up. "Evelyn, your brother got called in by the police. How could you do this to your own family?" My father's voice was harsh, but I responded calmly. "Lucas vandalized my property. If he doesn't want to face charges, he needs to pay for the damages." My father's tone dropped. "How much?" I didn't hesitate. $3,000. "How could you extort your own brother like this?" I let out a dry chuckle. "It's not extortion, Dad. It's called consequences." The next morning, my account received a $3,000 transfer, with a bitter note attached. "I never want to see you again." I read the message and felt nothing. A notification lit up my phone. A message from a distant relative. "Evelyn, is this true? People are saying you abandon your family even though they're struggling." I frowned. Another message came in. "Evelyn, how could you cut off your parents and brothers like this? They took care of you your whole life." I opened social media and immediately understood what was happening. My mother had been spreading a completely false story. She had written a long Facebook post claiming that I had turned my back on my family in their time of need, that I was selfish, only cared about myself, and had left my aging parents and struggling brothers with nothing. People who didn't know the full story flooded the comments, offering sympathy to her and vilifying me. I scrolled through the responses. So sad when successful children forget where they came from. Parents sacrifice everything for their kids, and this is the thanks they get? Evelyn must have let money get to her head. Anger flared in my chest. Not because of the stranger's passing judgment, but because my own family had rewritten the narrative, turning me into the villain. They didn't mention that I had paid the majority of my parents' mortgage. They didn't say that I had covered tuition bills and even personal expenses for Nathan and Lucas. They left out the fact that Lucas vandalized my apartment and that I had to call the police to protect myself. They only painted the image of a heartless daughter who turned her back on her family. I sat in silence for a few minutes, thinking, should I stay quiet? Ignore everything and let them control the narrative? No. I had endured their manipulation for far too long. I opened my app and tapped on New Post. If my family wants to make this public, then let me tell the truth. And I started writing. I laid it all out. Every dollar I had sent over the past 10 years. The money I had spent to help them keep their house, pay for tuition. Even the funds Nathan and Lucas used for new cars and vacations. I spoke about how they had always seen me as an ATM, not as a daughter or a sister. I exposed how Lucas had sealed my apartment door with industrial foam, forcing me to involve the police. I didn't turn my back on my family. My family never saw me as part of them, unless I was bringing in money. And now, I choose to stand up for myself. I hit post. Within hours, my post caused an uproar. Relatives started asking questions. Some commented surprised because they had never heard these things before. An aunt messaged me privately, asking if it was true that I had financially supported my family for years. Some extended family members even began calling out my mother for twisting the truth. But the strongest reaction came from my immediate family. Mom called immediately. I answered. Her voice was so furious she was nearly incoherent. Evelyn, what the hell did you just do? I remained calm. I told the truth, Mom. If you have the right to tell your version, so do I. She was breathless. You're humiliating this family. Your father is so ashamed he won't even leave the house. Have you thought about how this makes Nathan and Lucas feel? I clenched my phone tightly. Did they think about how I felt when Lucas vandalized my home? Did they think about me when I was breaking my back to pay their bills? She went silent. But then, as always, she twisted the situation. You're destroying this family. Her voice grew cold. If you do this, don't expect to come back. We are no longer family. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Mom, you destroyed this family, not me. And I hung up. No tears, no regret. For the first time in my life, I felt relief. I had lost my family, but maybe they were never truly my family to begin with. That phone call with my mother was the last time I heard her voice. After my post, my family went completely silent. No more angry messages from Nathan, no more furious calls from my father. All contact was severed, as if I had never existed to them. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I was free. At first, the silence felt unfamiliar. The evenings I used to spend solving my family's financial problems were now mine. No more desperate late-night calls. No more canceled plans because someone needed my help. I threw myself into work, channeling my energy into a major project my company was developing. With laser focus, I not only completed it ahead of schedule, but also secured a promotion. On the day I received my promotion letter, I stood in my new office, looking out over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling proud. For the first time in my life, I could enjoy my success without feeling obligated to share it with anyone. And then, I decided to travel. I had always dreamed of taking a long trip, but every time I thought about spending money on myself, I was pulled back into my responsibility. But now, nothing was holding me back. I booked a ticket to Italy. When the plane landed in Florence, I felt like I was stepping into an entirely new world. The cobblestone streets, the outdoor cafes filled with the scent of espresso, the historic buildings whispering stories of the past, it all made me feel more alive than ever before. I wandered through Florence's narrow alleyways, spent hours in museums marveling at Renaissance paintings I had only seen in books. I ate the freshest pasta of my life, sipped rich red wine as the sun set over the terracotta rooftops. I was no longer the person who constantly worried about others. I was no longer my family's bank account. I was just me. One late afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near Piazza della Signoria, enjoying a hot cappuccino. "You seem to really like this place." I looked up, meeting the warm gaze of a stranger. He had light brown hair, a relaxed smile, and an effortless confidence. "I think I just fell in love with this city," I replied with a small smile, taking a sip of my coffee. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me without asking, as if we had known each other for years. "Me too," he said. "This is my third time coming back." I raised an eyebrow. "A loyal traveler, huh?" "You could say that. My name's Alex." "Evelyn." We talked for a long time. He was from New York, worked in interior design, and had a deep passion for European architecture. His voice was calm, steady, sometimes laced with effortless humor. I couldn't remember the last time I had talked to someone without pressure, without tension. With Alex, there was no pretense, no expectations, just a simple, chance encounter. A genuine connection between two strangers. As I stood up to leave, he smiled. "If you ever want company while exploring Florence, I'd be happy to join you." I hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I think I'd like that." The next few days felt like a dream. Alex and I wandered through local markets, sampled gelato, and walked along the Arno River as the golden sunset painted the sky. He didn't ask about my family. He didn't probe into my past. He just saw me for who I was in this moment, a woman finally embracing her freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. Not for my money, not for my responsibilities, but just for being me. One evening, as we sat on a rooftop terrace, I gazed at the glowing city lights and smiled to myself. I had once believed that my happiness depended on my family. I had once thought that if I gave enough, they would love me the way I wanted to be loved. But the truth was, I didn't need to beg for love from people who never truly valued me. I could create my own happiness. And right here, under the Italian night sky, I knew I was doing exactly that. After returning from Italy, I stepped back into my life, but with an entirely new mindset. I was no longer the Evelyn who sacrificed everything for a family that never appreciated her. I was stronger, freer, and more myself than ever before. The months that followed were peaceful. Work thrived, I joined Sunday yoga classes, met new friends, and finally embraced the life I had put on hold for too long. But then, news about my old family started to surface. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Linda, my mother's cousin. "Evelyn, I know you don't care about the family anymore, but your parents are really struggling. Your father is working night shifts at a warehouse, and your mother is taking hourly cleaning jobs. They both look exhausted." I paused for a moment, staring at the screen. I had seen this coming. When I was financially supporting them, my parents never once considered standing on their own. They relied on me as a lifeline, never stopping to think if I was tired. And now that I had cut them off, they were forced to face reality. I set my phone down without replying. A few days later, I heard from a friend that Nathan had lost his job due to poor performance, and Lucas was still chasing his dream of becoming a social media influencer. But getting nowhere. I wasn't surprised, and I no longer felt responsible for them. They had the chance to change, to learn independence, but they didn't. And now they had to face the consequences of their own choices. I once thought that not spending Christmas with my parents and brothers would make me feel lonely. But as the holiday approached, I realized that I had people who truly cared about me, and that was what mattered most. I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment. Aunt Daisy arrived early, carrying a box of homemade cookies and a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you, Evelyn," she said as I welcomed her in. I smiled. "You're the only person in the family who's ever said that to me." Daisy looked at me, her eyes filled with both understanding and sadness. "I just wish they had realized your worth before it was too late." I didn't respond. Instead, I poured her a glass of wine and invited her inside. One by one, my friends arrived, bringing wine, desserts, and laughter. That entire evening, I laughed more than in any Christmas before. No forced conversations. No pressure to meet anyone's expectations. Just me, being happy on my own terms. As the clock struck midnight, I stood on my balcony, gazing at the twinkling Christmas lights across the city, and felt something I had never truly felt before. No more invisible burdens. No more feeling used. Just me, my life, and the people who truly loved me for who I was. And that was the greatest Christmas gift I could ever receive. I sat in my armchair, watching the city lights reflect against my window. Outside, the world kept moving, cars and people filling the glowing streets. But inside me, there was a stillness I had never known before. I had once believed that family was everything, that I had an obligation to sacrifice for them, no matter how they treated me. I had convinced myself that if I tried hard enough, if I gave enough, they would finally accept and love me. But the truth had been far different. Family isn't defined by blood alone. Family is made up of those who appreciate you, those who don't take advantage of you, those who love you without conditions. And my parents, Nathan and Lucas, they had never truly seen me as family in that way. I thought back to the way they cut me out of the will, as if to make a final statement that I was worth nothing to them except for my money. They believed that would break me, that I would beg for their acceptance again. But what they didn't realize was that they had unknowingly given me the greatest gift of all. They had severed the last remaining tie between us. They had set me free. I had once been a woman burdened by responsibility, expectations, and sacrifices that were never appreciated. But now, I had the power to choose my own life. I could go anywhere, do anything, and never again worry about a call demanding money or a guilt trip for not obeying their wishes. I could spend my time with people who truly loved me, friends who stood by me, even when I had nothing left to give. Aunt Daisy, who had quietly supported me all along. I could love and be loved freely, in a way I had never experienced before. My eyes drifted to my phone on the table. There were no missed calls from my family. They had let me go. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of that. I picked up my glass of wine, taking a slow sip, letting its warmth spread through me. I had once lived for my family. Now, I chose to live for myself. And that wasn't selfish. That was freedom. Evelyn's story isn't just personal. It reflects a reality that many people face in society. We grow up believing that family is the safest place, that love always comes with responsibility. But the truth is, family bonds don't always mean appreciation. Sometimes, walking away isn't selfish. It's the only way to protect yourself. When you are constantly being used, when your sacrifices go unrecognized, you have every right to put yourself first. Because in the end, this life is yours. What do you think about Evelyn's story? If you were in her position, would you keep sacrificing for family, or would you walk away to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more meaningful stories about life and family.